President and CEO of the New England Council. Needless to say, the Council is honored to partner with the New Hampshire Institute of Politics here at St. A's to present the Politics and Eggs series. We're grateful to Neil Levesque and the entire team here at the Institute. We couldn't ask for a better partner. And I know that as 24 fast approaches, we'll all be seeing a lot of each other. I also want to thank our very generous Politics and Eggs series sponsors, which you can see all of the banners around the room here today. If not for their ongoing support of these New England businesses and organizations, quite frankly, Politics and Eggs would not exist. So if you see anyone affiliated with any of these outstanding corporate neighbors here in this wonderful state, please thank them for their generous support. It's been a very busy spring so far for the New England Council. We have some other great programs planned in the weeks ahead. Next week we'll be in Connecticut for Capitol Hill breakfast with Congressman John Larson. And in June we look forward to breakfast events with Congressman Jared Golden, Portland, Maine, and New Hampshire's own Senator Maggie Hassan, right here at the Institute. As always, you can find more information and register for all our events on our website, newenglandcouncil.com. But today, we're thrilled to be here in the Granite State, the first of what I suspect will be many, many Politics and Eggs events in 2023. I'm now pleased to introduce Neil Levesque, the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, to introduce our very special guest.
Well, welcome everyone. This is a great day. I'm glad that we filled the room to the brim again. The fire marshal's not here, so that's very good. Again, just to reiterate what Jim said about the New England Council and our partnership, it's an outstanding thing, and this has been going on for many years, thanks to Fred Coker, who started Politics and Eggs. And special thanks to Ann Kamen, who's in the back, who gets here about 5 in the morning to make sure that everything is where it should be. We work with a lot of presidential campaigns and other candidates, and I have to say that today, the team that the governor has brought with her, they are about the easiest and best campaign we've ever dealt with. They're like a Swiss watch. You call them, everything is in line, everything's perfect. It says something. So without further ado, I want to introduce our speaker today. Governor Haley was the 116th governor of South Carolina. She served from 2011 to 2017. She was the first female and also the youngest governor at the time. She then went on to serve as UN ambassador for the United States in New York. A couple quick facts that a lot of people don't know. She went to Clemson. We don't hold that against her here at St. Anselm, but went to Clemson. I think it's great. She was an accounting major. I think that's very important with the news of the day. A few other items. Her husband, Michael, is an officer in the South Carolina National Guard. He served in Afghanistan. And together with their 2 children, they live outside of Charleston, South Carolina. A very warm welcome to the governor today, Nikki Haley.
As I got back here yesterday, it's still cold. It's still cold. It's going to be June, and it's still cold. So I'm thinking the next time when I come back next month, it's got to warm up by then. But it is certainly great to be here. I didn't think there was anything harder to sign than a baseball, but I think the eggs are it. But we will sign more eggs. I think we signed a basket or so, but we'll make sure we get those done. For those of you that don't know me, I was born and raised in a small rural town in South Carolina. 2,500 people, 2 stoplights. You couldn't think about doing something wrong without somebody already telling your mom. We were the only Indian family in that small southern town. We weren't white enough to be white. We weren't black enough to be black. They didn't know who we were, what we were, or why we were there. But I remember when I would get teased on the playground, my mom would always say, your job is not to show them how you're different. Your job is to show them how you're similar. This country could use my mom's advice right now. And even though they didn't know why we were there, my parents knew why we were there. Because there was never a day they didn't remind me, my brothers, and my sister how blessed we were to live in America. My mom started a business out of the living room of her home. 30-plus years later, it was a very successful company. I started doing the books for the business when I was 13. It wasn't until I got to college that I realized that was child labor. But I learned the value of a dollar, and I learned what all of you go through every day. When times were tough, we stretched that dollar, we got creative, and we made it work. And when times were good, we didn't celebrate because we knew the bad times were going to happen again. I did go on to Clemson, go Tigers, graduated with a degree in accounting. I met my husband my very first weekend there. We dated for 7 years. We've been married for 26, and yes, we have 2 children. And then when I left Clemson, I went on to the corporate world. And then I came back home to the family business. And one day I happened to be sitting with my mom, telling her how hard it was to make a dollar and how easy it was for government to take it. And my mom said, quit complaining about it, do something about it. I did not know you weren't supposed to run against a 30-year incumbent in a primary. Truly, ignorance is bliss. And once I realized he was related to half the district, the only option was to win. So I went around the district and I said, look, we've got way too many lawyers at the State House. I think they need a really good accountant. And the district took a chance on me and we won. Then I got to work at the State House. And in South Carolina, legislation was typically voted by a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. But one day they passed a bill that would give legislators a pay raise. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, silence. The ayes have it. Yet to this day, you can't find anyone that says they voted themselves a pay raise. We had a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican governor, and I was furious. I went to the Speaker of the House and I said, this is why people don't trust us. And I filed a bill that said anything important enough to be debated on the floor of the House or the Senate is important enough for people to know how their legislator voted. And the Speaker said, put the bill away. We don't need to have it. We will decide what the public needs to see and what they don't. And I remember going home to my husband that night saying, if I can't even get legislative votes on the record, what am I doing here? He said, then fight. So I went around the state of South Carolina and said, did you know of all the bills passed in the House, only 8% were on the record? Of all the bills passed in the Senate, only 1% was on the record. So if you didn't know how your House member voted 92% of the time, if you didn't know how your senator voted 99% of the time, how did you know who to vote for when you went to the polls? And the people of South Carolina were shocked. To put it in perspective, my first year in office, I was chairman of the freshman class. My second year, I was majority whip. My third year, I was on a powerful business committee. My fourth year, I was subcommittee chair of banking. The year that I wouldn't put the bill away, they stripped me of everything. I could take the well, no one would hear me speak. I could sponsor a bill, no one would co-sponsor. So I ran for governor. And I'm proud to say one of the first bills we signed into law is now in South Carolina. Anything debated on the floor of the House or the Senate requires a legislative vote on the record, and we took it a step further and we did it on every section of the budget. And for those who know me, I love music, and so on the day of the bill signing, we blasted throughout the State House, Pat Benatar's Hit Me With Your Best Shot. When I became governor, we took on a state that was hurting. We had a lot of families in need. We were in double-digit unemployment, and we had to get to work. And by the time I left, we had turned into an economic powerhouse. We were building planes with Boeing. We were building more BMWs than any place in the world. We brought in Mercedes-Benz. We brought in Volvo. We had 5 international tire companies. They were referring to us as the beast of the Southeast, which I still love. We passed tort reform in South Carolina. We cut taxes for our small businesses in South Carolina. We made sure we became business-friendly. And more than that, we took 35,000 people off of welfare. We put them to work. We went into our prison systems and focused on these inmates and how to grow them. And now South Carolina has the lowest recidivism rate in the country. But more than that, we had South Carolinians being proud again. When I left, we were named the friendliest state in the country. We were named the most patriotic state in the country. And we were named the #2 state in the country people were moving to. And the unemployment rate had gotten to 4%, and we had announced jobs in every single county in the state. We had 250,000 more people working than when I came in. And then I got the call for the United Nations. And my response was, I don't even know what the United Nations does. I just know everybody hates it. But when you get the call to serve your country, you jump. And what I knew is when I got there, I wanted countries to know what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. And we got to work. We quickly moved out of the Iran deal. We moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. We passed the largest set of sanctions against a country in a generation with North Korea. But the most important thing we did was take the kick me sign off of our backs, and we were respected again at the United Nations. Now I'm running for president, and I don't need to tell you how bad it is. You don't need to turn on the news to feel it. You feel it if you go to the grocery store. You know it if you hear your kids talk about school. You know it if you talk to your family and friends and they tell you they're worse off today than they were a year ago. We are $31 trillion in debt, almost 32. We are having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. China owns 12% of our debt. Now, it would be easy for me to just beat up on Biden for that. But I have always spoken hard truths, and I'm going to do that with you today. Our Republicans did that to us too. You go and look at that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that they passed with no accountability whatsoever. They expanded welfare that now leaves us with 90 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. Did the Republicans try and fix it? Nope. They doubled down and opened up earmarks for the first time in 10 years. They pushed through 7,000 of them in December. Want to know how they spent your money? $7.5 million on horse racing in Arizona, $30 million on an honors college in Vermont, $10 million on a courthouse in Colorado. That's not how we want our taxpayer money spent. All while 1 in 6 Americans can't pay their utility bill. 60% of Americans are in credit card debt. Social Security is going to go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare is going to go bankrupt in 5. So when you hear them talk about this debt ceiling, understand both those parties did that to us. Every member of Congress did that to us. And we can't let that happen again. You look at our education system, everybody wants to blame COVID for education. No, we had a problem with education before COVID. Pre-COVID, 70% of 8th graders in our country were not proficient in reading. Think about that. 67% of 8th graders were not proficient in math. Last week it came out that the numbers are even worse when it comes to history and civics. Then you add 2 years of lockdowns and our kids are in a world of hurt. Yet 90% of American children are still under critical race theory, where if a little girl goes into kindergarten, if she's white, they're telling her she's bad. And if she's brown or black, they're telling her she's never going to be good enough and she's always going to be a victim. We've got biological boys playing in girls' sports. It is the women's issue of our time. Where is everyone? My daughter ran track in high school. I wouldn't even know how to have that conversation with her. How do we get our girls comfortable with biological boys in their locker room? It's not okay. Everybody know about Dylan Mulvaney? Bud Light, right? Make no mistake. That is a guy dressed up like a girl making fun of women. Women don't act like that. Yet everybody's wondering why a third of our teenage girls seriously contemplated suicide last year. What are we doing to them? We're supposed to be growing strong girls, confident girls, not ones being made fun of. Then you look at crime. Around the country, people are worried about their children riding their bike down the street. They're worried about getting carjacked in a restaurant. And the illegal immigration situation is still out of control. I'm the only candidate that's actually been to the border this cycle. And I didn't go and pull a Kamala and come back. I went 400 miles down that border. You're not ready for what I saw. When you wake up in the morning, you get your coffee and you watch the news. When these ranchers get up in the morning, they get their coffee and they go see if anyone died crossing the fence. They pick up whatever little kids were left behind and turn them over to Border Patrol. There's areas that are rape centers for the women and girls that come across. When I talk to sheriffs before 7 a.m., they round up multiple illegal immigrants and turn them over to Border Patrol. Border Patrol documents them and releases them until their court date years from now. When I talk to Border Patrol and ask them their job, they said, "You want to know what we do? We're glorified babysitters. They don't let us do our job." 5 million illegal immigrants have come into this country. We had enough fentanyl cross the border that would kill every single American last year. The number one cause of death for adults 18 to 49, fentanyl. You take the number of deaths from the Iraq, Vietnam, and Afghanistan combined, and we've had more overdoses than that. Don't think China doesn't know exactly what they're doing when they send it over. And then you look at our national security situation. Did you ever think we'd look at the sky and see a Chinese spy balloon looking right back at us? It was a national embarrassment. You look at Russia invading Ukraine, you look at North Korea testing ballistic missiles, you look at Iran building a bomb. Make no mistake, none of that would have happened had we not had that debacle in Afghanistan. I'm a military spouse. I'm the wife of a combat veteran who served in Afghanistan. The idea that he and his military brothers and sisters had to watch the U.S. pull out of Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that told our friends. More importantly, think about what that told our enemies. You've got China building up their military. They've bought 400,000 acres of U.S. soil, most recently near Grand Forks Air Force Base, where our most sensitive drone technology is. They've built up their military. They have the largest naval fleet in the world. They have more air defense systems than we do. They just came out with the 5th generation fighter jet. How'd they do it? Stealing our intellectual property that we handed to them on a silver platter. They steal over $600 billion in intellectual property from us every year. And President Xi started a commission that said any company that does business in China has to cooperate with the Chinese military. He personally chairs that commission. Think about our tech companies. I want you to think about all of our financial data, all of our healthcare data, all of our children's lifestyle data, and now know that the Chinese military has it. So that's a lot of bad. It's a lot of bad. It's hard to find anything good. But now I'm going to tell you what I told South Carolinians when I became governor. No more whining. No more complaining. Now we get to work. How do we fix it? When it comes to the economy, we pull back the $500 billion of unspent COVID money that's still out there. Instead of the 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, let's go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud that we know exist. If 15% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing, cut up the credit cards. Don't ever let them tell you Republicans and Democrats don't get along on anything because they love to spend your money. I had to balance a budget when I was governor. You have to balance budgets in your businesses. Why is Congress the only group that doesn't have to balance a budget? Let's stop the spending, stop the borrowing, stop the earmarks. When we start to focus on that, we can start focusing on paying down the debt and taking care of our spending. I will veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. When it comes to education, in South Carolina, we knew if a child couldn't read by 3rd grade, they were 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we started holding those kids back that couldn't read. We brought in their parents. We did reading remediation. We made sure they had summer programs. We got them back on track so that they could be successful. Let's do that around the country. There should be complete transparency in the classroom. No parent should ever wonder what is being said or taught to their child in the classroom. Every parent deserves to know what's happening, and there should be no walls when it comes to schools and parents. Teachers desperately want to teach, but let parents parent. That's the way it's supposed to be. And let's let parents pick the school their children should go to. We don't need kids going to government-mandated schools just because of a zip code. And then finally, let's build things in America again. Let's put vocational classes back in our high schools. In South Carolina, we had apprenticeships all over South Carolina, and we taught our kids to build what we were making in South Carolina. Let's do that all over the country. And when it comes to our universities, we tell them, you either take Chinese money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over, and we get that Chinese infiltration out of our schools. And when it comes to crime, it's easy. Have the backs of your law enforcement, take the numbers of your criminals, make examples of them, and make your district attorneys prosecute according to the law. No more weak penalties. And when it comes to illegal immigration, when I was governor, we passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country. We did a mandatory E-Verify program that required businesses to have to prove the people they were hiring were here legally. We'll do that nationwide. We'll make sure we defund sanctuary cities. We will go back to remain in Mexico because guess what? Nobody wants to remain in Mexico. We will keep the provisions of Title 42, and instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. And then finally, when it comes to our national security, we will let countries know what we expect of them. We'll stop being reactionary. That's what countries expect us to do. They want to see a strong America. They want to see a proud America. When we do that, there were two things at the United Nations that our enemies never wanted us to have. They never wanted us to be energy independent, and they never wanted us to have a strong military. We will do both of those. We will no longer go hat in hand to Saudi Arabia. We won't sit there and get dirty oil from Venezuela. We will become energy independent. And when it comes to having a strong military, the first thing you have to think about is what our parents taught us when we were growing up. Take care of those who take care of you. The recruitment in our military has dropped 25%. Everybody's trying to figure out why that is. Do you want me to tell you why it is? We have 33,000 homeless veterans in this country. 1 in 3 of our heroes suffer from PTSD or have thought about suicide. Think about that. 17 of our heroes commit suicide every single day. That's shameful. 4 times the number of post 9/11 troops and veterans have committed suicide as opposed to dying in combat. That's nothing for us to be proud of. The average wait time for a veteran to go to the VA for a primary doctor care appointment, 29 days. And if it goes to 30, they get to go wherever they want. So what happens is during that 29 days, they call them reschedule. So it never gets into the over 30. So this is what we'll do to take care of that. I think that Congress should have to go to the VA for their health care. When every member of Congress suddenly has to go to the VA for their health needs, I bet you they'll fix that place right up. But what we will do is we'll focus on the veterans and focus on the transition. Everybody sees our members in uniform deploy. They see them come home and they see the hugs and all the love. As a military spouse, I can tell you it doesn't end there. Because when we get home, they can't be around loud sounds. Some of them can't be in crowds. They feel like life passed them by because they weren't there and everybody's moved on without them. And there's no one there to pick up the pieces. We need to transition these soldiers. We need to make sure that we are constantly checking in with them. We need to give them choice for health care. Let them go to wherever doctor they want to. Let them get the mental health that they need. We need to make sure that we have more telehealth so that we can actually focus on these mental health needs and they don't have to wait to get that help. We need to do screenings for mental health just like we do for blood pressure. We need to take care of their spouses because they deserve good health care too. And when it comes to the GI Bill, they've earned that benefit. Let them use it on other things besides education. And for God's sake, let's take the wokeness out of the military. There's nothing that demoralizes the military more than that. My husband will tell you, the idea that our soldiers are having to take gender pronoun classes is ridiculous. So we have the solutions. We can get us back on track. But the one thing that bothers me more than anything else is the national self-loathing that has happened in our country. The idea that they say America's bad or rotten or racist. I was elected the first female minority governor in history. America's not racist, we're blessed. Our kids need to know to love America. They should be saying the Pledge of Allegiance before they start school every day. We need to get back to what makes us strong and proud. Because when we do that, that's when things will start to take shape. Do you remember when you were growing up? Bless you. Do you remember how simple life was? Do you remember how safe you felt? It was about faith, family, and country. Your parents raised you to be a responsible citizen. You went to school and you learned what you needed to be successful. You went to church and you found your faith and your conscience. Don't you want that again? We could have that again. But in order to do that, we have got to have a new generational leader. We've got to leave the baggage. We've got to leave the negativity in the past. And we've got to focus on these new problems with new solutions. But if we do that, that's when we'll see magic again. Someone asked me why I was running. And I told them, I said, you know, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunities. I want them to see that America again. I'm doing this for my husband and his military brothers and sisters. They need to know their sacrifice meant something. They need to know we love our country and that freedom matters. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. And I'm doing this for my son who's a junior in college, and I see him writing papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. And for the first time, 78% of Americans don't think their kids are going to live as good of a life as we did. We can't be okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We've got a country to save. But I will tell you, if you will join me in this fight, I promise you our best days are to come. Thank you very much. God bless you. You want to do Q&A?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have students from St. A's who have a microphone, so here he is here. And just raise your hand and maybe identify yourself. If I could just ask a couple of questions, Governor, Ambassador.
It's Nikki. Those are moments in
Nikki.
time.
Ukraine. There are some members of the Republican Party in Washington who have indicated it's a bad decision to be there, the United States. We need to pull out. We shouldn't be spending any money at all. What would be President Haley's position on Ukraine?
One of the first things you need to know is we had no better ally at the United Nations in Ukraine. They voted with us on absolutely everything. Any press conference I had, they showed up and stood by us without being asked. They were with us every step of the way. But what's important to know about this war that's happening with Ukraine and Russia is this is bigger than Ukraine. This is about a war for freedom, and it's one that we have to win. If you look at what happened, Russia invades this freedom-loving country, and what do Ukrainians do? The men go to the front lines and immediately start defending their country. The women say, we're not sitting back. They start making Molotov cocktails. They gave Ukraine 5 days, and look at where they are today. Russia is in the worst spot they could possibly be. We know that because they're getting drones from Iran and missiles from North Korea. They've raised the draft age in Russia to 65. A couple of weeks ago, they pulled Russians off the street and handed them shovels to fight with. Putin knows he's in trouble. But more importantly, we need to believe tyrants when they tell us what they're going to do. China said they were going to invade Hong Kong. They did. Russia said they were going to invade Ukraine. We watched it. China says Taiwan is next. We better believe them. Russia said Poland and the Baltics are after Ukraine. If that happens, we're looking at World War III. This is about preventing war. This is about stopping it. And make no mistake, before the Olympics, when China and Russia held hands and said they were unlimited partners, they were telling the world something. More than that, when the Russian plane hit our U.S. drone and China showed up on their doorstep in Russia again, they were telling us something. A win for Russia is a win for China. We can never forget that. Now, that doesn't mean we give money to Ukraine. It doesn't mean we put troops on the ground. But it means we work with our allies and we make sure they have the equipment and the ammunition to win, because they have proven they can do it. We just need to get the job done.
Do you give the administration any credit in keeping NATO cohesive, working all together?
I mean, with all due respect, that wasn't the administration that did that. That was Russia that did that. When Russia invaded Ukraine, NATO came together like we've never seen before. It's the one benefit of what happened. All of a sudden, they realized we better raise our defense money. We better start helping because this is on our border. We better do something. That's what happened. Actually, the administration, what I wish they would have done, there was a whole year that Russia surrounded Ukraine and nobody did anything. We could have prevented this. President Trump had arranged for equipment to go to Ukraine in March of that year. Biden pulled it back because he didn't want to cause any problems. There was another round that was supposed to go May of that year. Biden held off because he didn't want to upset Putin. If we had done what we were supposed to, we would have actually prevented war. And then all of this has been too little, too late. Ukraine's been begging for it. Now that they're getting what they need, they're winning. So, it's one of those things you have to be. You can't run scared of these guys. You have to show them what you're made of. When that Russian plane hit our American drone, what'd we do? Nothing. What would I have done? Put 2 more drones back up there and a fighter jet. I would have put our naval fleet back in the Black Sea because we never should have left it in the first place. That's what puts them on their heels. That's what makes them stop.
One of the lightning rod issues in this campaign is abortion. In South Carolina, the governor has on his desk a ban 6 weeks. He's going to sign. Governor Florida has a ban of 6 weeks. Governor of North Carolina, I believe it's 12 weeks. Your colleague, Senator Lindsey Graham, indicates he'd like to see a 15-week. What is Nikki Haley's position on maybe a federal ban on abortion?
Well, when I was governor, we signed a 20-week, but that was as far as we could go with Roe being in effect. I will tell you, I am unapologetically pro-life. Not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband was adopted, and I live with that blessing every day. I had trouble having both of my children, and I see those blessings every day. Having said that, I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice any more than I want you to judge me for being pro-life. Look at what happened with this situation. Here you had, prior to 1973, you had 46 different laws where the people decided what they wanted their abortion laws to be in the state. And in 1973, Roe came in and they threw out 46 state laws and they said abortion anytime, anywhere, for any reason. This is a hugely personal issue for every woman and every man. Unelected justices should not be making this decision. So now it's back in the states where it belongs, where people can use the power of their voices to decide what Granite Staters want in New Hampshire, what South Carolinians want in South Carolina. We should let that system play out because it's close to the people and they can decide that. From a federal level, which has been what a lot of the debate has been about. No one has been honest with you about what the real debate is. In order for there to be any sort of abortion ban, it would take a majority of the House, 60 senators, and a president to sign it. We haven't had 60 Republican senators in 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president could ban abortions any more than a Democrat president could get rid of our state laws. It's just not practical. So if we want to talk about a federal law, let's talk about consensus. Let's humanize the situation rather than demonizing the situation. Can't we all agree that we don't want to see late-term abortions? Can't we all agree that we should encourage more adoptions and better quality adoptions so those kids feel more love and not less? Can't we agree there should be more access to contraception? Can't we agree that doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them? And can't we agree that any woman that has an abortion shouldn't go to jail and get the death penalty? Can't we start there? That's where we start. So when they want to talk about how many weeks are you for, don't let them divide us on that. We are for saving as many babies as possible and supporting as many moms as we can. We're going to humanize this issue because it's that personal. And when we start dealing with it that way, that's when everybody wins. And so, if they ask me how many weeks I am, I'm going to ask them, have they asked Kamala and Biden whether they're for 36 weeks, 37 weeks, or 38 weeks? No one's asked them that because Congress recently supported passing abortion up until the time of birth. So let's have a true, honest conversation if we're going to have it. And let's focus on how we save babies and how we support mothers in the process.
Do you have any ideas on how we can reduce the political rhetoric regarding violence? I mean, we just had a member of Congress from Virginia that an individual came into his district office with a bat looking for him just to whack. You had a member of the Republican Party who was shot a couple of years ago, Congressman Scalia. How do we tone down the political violence that seems to be occurring?
If you look at how far we've fallen, is if you go to Congress, anybody that drops legislation in Congress, everybody wants to know whose it is before they decide whether to support it. That's how you know we've hit rock bottom. The tone changes from the top. We need to go back to our national purpose. We don't have to have faint hearts or watered-down compromises to do it. But when you have a national purpose, then you bring people together. Then we're focused on one thing. We look so distracted. And when we're distracted, the world is less safe. We're seeing that. But we've got to, for the sake of our kids, focus on the things that really matter. Don't let the media dictate how you feel, because they're trying to get clicks and sound bites and all of that. Don't let Congress go in there and spew off on TV about how mad they are about something. Tell them to get in a room and do it. We need a time of action. We need to start focusing on results. We need to start getting to where people feel like government's working for them and not the other way around. The reason you see the frustration we have are two things. One, people don't feel heard and they're frustrated. And two, America has never dealt with the cancer that is mental health. 1 in 4 people have a mental health issue. But if treated, they can live a perfectly normal life. But if someone has any sort of mental health concerns, you can't find mental health hospitals anymore. If you want to get a therapist, we don't have enough. You can't find a therapist. If you do get a therapist, insurance doesn't cover it, and you have to pay cash. And then after you pay cash for that, you have to pay cash for the medicine. And we have no substance abuse centers that really take care of the situation. So when people have mental health issues, they lean on substance abuse to dull the pain. We have to start dealing with the real issues we have in America. We can't keep hiding under a blanket. And that's what I think has happened. And so now everybody's so used to cheering on the person that says the craziest thing. Our children they don't want that. Find any kid that watches news today. They don't. They think both sides are crazy. And I don't blame them. We need to bring them in. They need to believe in America again.
We have a few minutes for questions. Again, just raise your hand and we'll get this very shortly.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you very much for your focus on our military and our veterans. I have a question for you, and hopefully you have a solution. Why is it that of any group in our country, our veterans struggle for financing more than any minority in our country, and what would you do to address it?
We would literally, when I was governor in South Carolina, we reduced taxes for veterans on their retirement. We made sure they got in-state tuition. We developed a portal where we went and gave them firsthand whether they needed employment, skills, anything else. We have to take care of our veterans. I am telling you, as a military spouse, I see it every day. If a veteran is having to go look for something, we have failed when it comes to that. No veteran should ever want or need anything. These are people who are willing to shed blood for us to defend and protect our country. And when I read off those statistics of where veterans are today, we should be ashamed of that. It's not okay. So I will tell you a huge priority. I wasn't kidding when I said Congress needs to start getting their health care from the VA, because it's time that they start putting veterans first. If veterans put their bodies on the line to defend us, we've got to start putting our actions in place to defend them, and not just while they're gone, but for the rest of their life. And so my promise to you is there will be no veteran that suffers when I'm president.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to ask, I know that you were talking about federal abortion restrictions earlier, and you mentioned that, a consensus is unlikely in Congress, but in the event that Congress did reach a consensus, a majority of Republicans are behind it, and a national abortion ban lands on your desk, would you sign it?
I think if there's 60 votes, which we're not anywhere near that, and if there's something where they've come together on consensus, yes, of course I would sign it, because that's 60 votes out of 100 saying this is what America wants. But we're at 45, so we're not anywhere close.
Could I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
New Hampshire voters are overwhelmingly pro-choice, so how would you reconcile that in the New Hampshire primary?
I'm being very honest with you. I can't suddenly change my pro-life position because I'm campaigning in New Hampshire, but what I will tell you is I think it's incredibly personal. And I'm going to treat it with the respect it deserves. And I'm also going to tell you the truth that don't let them tell you that a Republican president can ban abortion, because we have 45 pro-life senators. We might get 1 or 2 this cycle. We're nowhere near 60. And nobody wants to tell you that. The media won't tell you that, but I'm going to tell you that. And so rather than debating something that's never going to go anywhere, why don't we debate what we can make a difference on? And that is, how do you save babies but support moms? How do we make sure that we're giving the support that's needed in the time that needed for a woman that's challenged? I had a girlfriend in college, and she was raped. And the torture she went through, wondering if she was pregnant, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Everybody in this room has a story. Everybody in this room has an experience that makes them believe what they believe. I'm going to always be respectful of that. And I think we all need to start doing that with each other.
We have a question over here from AARP. Mary?
Thank you for taking my question, and welcome.
Thank you.
I'm a volunteer, as you know, from AARP, and throughout my life, I as well as my generation, we've contributed to Social Security. Right now, I'm working part-time, and someday I hope I can finally fully retire. But my concern is that Social Security is not going to be there, probably not even for my generation or even the generations that come up. And I would like to know what your plan would be as president to ensure the stability of Social Security, not only for us, but also for the generations that will be coming. Thank you.
Thank you. No, and I'll tell you another hard truth. We have to deal with entitlement reform. Anybody that says we don't is not dealing with the fact that we're going to go bankrupt in 10 years on Social Security and 5 years on Medicare. But I don't think we have to touch anyone that is paid into the system. I don't think we touch anyone that's getting benefits now. You know, my parents, I take care of them. I don't want anybody touching theirs. The way we fix this is my kids are in their 20s. They're the ones we go to and we say, we're going to raise the retirement age for you to reflect life expectancy. Instead of cost of living increases, we're going to do increases based on inflation. We'll limit benefits on the wealthy, and we'll expand Medicare Advantage plans so that people have more choices. That's the way we'll deal with it. That's how you'll make sure that we have Social Security and Medicare for you, but we're also focusing on how we can keep Social Security and Medicare for those who have paid in and others in the future. It's the only way we can deal with it is to acknowledge it and start treating it. But we start with that younger generation.
Gentleman over here. Just identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Connery. You've touched on many of the root issues that we see with violence in the U.S. right now: mental health, substance abuse, poverty. Instead of addressing those issues, many members of Congress are having a reading comprehension problem on the Second Amendment. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What is your position on the Second Amendment?
I am a concealed weapons permit holder myself. I am strongly pro-Second Amendment. You know, I will tell you the way that we protect Americans is to make sure Americans can protect themselves. And, you know, there's nothing that entices a criminal more than to see a gun-free zone. But when you know and you have people who want to protect themselves, I always say for anybody that wants to take guns away, you can't do that as long as you can't promise that the bad guys aren't going to get guns. Every one of us knows that. We see it every day. And so what Congress says is they want to take a certain kind of gun away. You can do that. That's temporary satisfaction, but you're going to have another shooting next week until you acknowledge what's at the heart of those shootings. The last 17 out of 18 mass shootings that have happened were mental health related. But everybody wants the quick, easy fix. Don't take away freedoms to get that quick, easy fix. Make sure that people can protect their families and do what they choose to do. So I am strongly pro-Second Amendment.
Okay. Gus? Do we have any other questions? Thank you.
Governor, thank you. I'm Gus Fromuth. My question has to do with energy. One of the things that the United States promised at the outset of the invasion of Ukraine was that we would keep Europe whole on all the energy that it needed to get through this starvation policy of not taking any more Russian oil and gas. To that end, we have had to go and export a considerable amount of our fossil fuels, natural gas, oil, to Europe to make them whole during this episode, which doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon. One of the impacts of that was to cause our prices here domestically to skyrocket. In natural gas's case, it went up fivefold last winter, and it probably will do so again. 10% of all the natural gas that we produce in this country now goes to Europe through LNG tankers that they're in a hurry to go and build receiving terminals over there. So my question to you is, the problem that we have with that is that Europe refuses on its own terrain to drill for oil, to drill for natural gas, and instead is counting on our gifts of our product, which of course is costing us as taxpayers and as citizens out of our pocket. I find that to be really a big problem for us, and I was wondering if you had a reaction to that. Thank you.
It is a national security issue that America stay energy independent. It's hugely important, and I'll go at this from two different angles. First of all, I pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement when I was at the United Nations, not because I don't care about the environment. I do. I care about clean air. I care about clean water, all of that. But what the Paris Climate Agreement did was it pushed, it had America putting all of these regulations on our businesses, and the deal for China, for example, was they'll deal with it in 10 years. I've dealt with China long enough that 10 years never comes. So the number one thing is we have to be energy independent. We don't need dirty oil from Venezuela. We don't need to go hat in hand to Saudi Arabia. Only once we have enough for ourselves can we give anything out. And the Europeans are our brothers and sisters, but let me tell you something. I was very hard on Germany, because we wouldn't have this Russia-Ukraine situation had Germany not become so dependent on Russia the way they did. We tried to stop the pipeline, and they kept going through. We kicked and screamed about it and tried to tell the rest of the Europeans what was going to happen, and they let them go through it. So we always have to take care of America first. We always have to do that. Only then can we go help anyone else, but not before that.
Ambassador, you proposed at one time any candidate over the age of 75 should be given a cognitive test. Can you explain why you're proposing that?
First, I said that we have to have term limits in our country. I've been a long proponent for term limits. But the second thing is I said we need to have mental competency tests for people over the age of 75 that are serving us in D.C. And, Joe Biden got offended that I said that. I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I don't care if you do it for 50 and up. I'm saying that if you look at those serving in D.C. right now, first of all, look at them. That kind of says enough. Secondly, these are people making serious decisions. They're deciding things on our national security. They're deciding things on our future economic policy. They're deciding things on our welfare. Don't we want them to be at the top of their game? And these mental competency tests are simple. They are name these words with this same first letter. What month are we in? What town were you born in? They're very, very simple. But when you look at the fact that Joe Biden, when asked by a child which country he was in the week before and he couldn't say it, we should be worried about that. When they asked him how many grandchildren he had and he didn't know, that's not okay. Because I know when I was at the United Nations, we got intel on the health and welfare of other leaders around the world. I know that Russia and China see what's going on. I know our enemies know the state of it. I don't want them taking advantage of it. And I think that the American people deserve better.
Questions in the back? I see a couple of people here. Sir, go ahead.
Hello, Wes Chapman. I am a recovering accountant myself, so I feel some kinship.
Accountants are problem solvers. We are. We're problem solvers at the end of the day.
Well, I've got a foundational question.
Okay.
I was privileged enough to be raised at the elbow of a constitutional law expert, and whenever something happened in the law that I didn't understand, we ended up tripping over the concepts of prosecutorial discretion and judicial review. And David defended those as, key elements of our law system. And we agreed what really made the U.S. exceptional was our laws, law and order. I look at prosecutorial discretion now, and I see, and it isn't party. We can go all the way back to when someone decided that even though we have a federal law against marijuana, it's okay for states to ignore it. We have local municipalities that don't enforce our immigration laws. We have a New York City DA that thinks shoplifting is some type of developmental exercise. Similarly, judicial review. You used to look up to judges. Now you shop judges because an individual judge in some corner of the country can overrule a president, and there's only two things you can do. You can appropriate funds, spend a lot of time on spending, or you can legislate. But what good does it do to make laws if an individual prosecutor can decide to ignore it, or an individual judge can hold up the entire country.
You're exactly right. We are a country of laws. The second we stop being a country of laws, we give up everything this country was founded on. And we have to go back to that. And that's why, first of all, when I said crimes, we have to prosecute according to the law. What we're seeing right now is district attorneys are weakening the penalties. We need to go back to bail reform so that we can actually keep these people and make examples of them in the process. So but when it comes to the judges, you see it's gotten more and more partisan. I mean, look at how much Republicans and Democrats fight to see how many judges they can get. You know, when they're conservative judges, yeah, I love it. When they're liberal judges, I don't. But we shouldn't even be thinking that way, right? They should be interpreting the law the way it is written. And that's not happening. And there is no judicial review. There is no accountability that actually looks at what's happening. It's an issue. And I think that the problem is no one ever really calls out the judges. They say, oh, the judge did this. And they complain about it. But there really is no set committee that goes and looks at these things where you could complain and say, what's the validation for this? And them have to prove it to you. And I think we have to get back to that. You shouldn't feel party or anything partisan in any judicial decision, in any agency that is working, in the Department of Justice and FBI, you shouldn't feel partisanship at all. And the problem is we feel it everywhere. And that's when you know the system's starting to get corrupt. And we have to go and change that.
Okay. We're going to have to move along because he's got other people questions. All the way in the back, the mic will be coming.
Excuse me. Thanks.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Just identify yourself.
My name is Paul Millar. I'm a certified public accountant. I work for the 8th largest CPA
I love all these
firm.
accountants here.
Yeah.
It makes me happy.
I think bringing accounting skills to Washington is really needed. I really admire great leaders, people who lead through adversity. Assuming you're the next president and there's a divided Congress, how would you work with a divided Congress to achieve what you want to achieve?
You know, it's not what I say, it's what I've done. You know, I have been a 2-term governor that took a double-digit unemployment state and turned it into an economic powerhouse. I was at the United Nations. I didn't deal with one country. I dealt with 193. So I've dealt with both of those. In all of those, if you look at my record, it was always about getting things done. It wasn't about talking about things. It was about getting things done. And I'll give you an example of probably the toughest situation I've had to deal with was when we had the shooting at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston. I don't know if y'all remember. We had 12 people do what so many people do on a Wednesday night in South Carolina. They went to Bible study. But on that night, someone else showed up. He didn't look like them. He didn't sound like them. He didn't act like them. And they didn't call the cops. And they didn't throw him out. Instead, they pulled up a chair and they prayed with him for an hour. And when they bowed their heads in that last prayer, he began to shoot. These were people like Ethel Lance, who had lost her daughter 2 years prior to breast cancer. And she would go around Mother Emanuel Church cleaning, singing, "One day at a time, sweet Jesus. That's all I ask of you. Give me the strength to do every day what I have to do." We had Tywanza Sanders. He was our youngest victim. He had just finished college, had the world in front of him. But on that night, he stood in front of his 87-year-old great Aunt Susie and looked at the killer and said, "You don't have to do this. We mean no harm to you." Or it was people like Cynthia Hurd, whose life motto was simply to be kinder than necessary. That's who these people were. They weren't famous, but they loved their family, they loved their church, and they loved their community. This was the first time we had a shooting in a place of worship in our country, and South Carolina was broken. It was on the heels of Ferguson, so we had just watched the TV and all the explosions that were happening. The national media came into South Carolina wanting to define this and making it about race and guns and the death penalty. And I strong-armed them and said, there will be a time and place we will talk about that. But right now we have 9 souls we need to lay to rest. and we're going to focus on that. And I didn't have that luxury because 2 days later, they came out with the Killer's Manifesto, and there he was standing with the Confederate flag, spewing hate. The Confederate flag is something that's very personal in South Carolina, and it runs very deep. It was put on top of the State House in the 60s by a Democrat governor, and it was never taken back down. And in 2000, they had a negotiation, and they negotiated to bring the flag down, but they put it right in front of the State House. It was almost worse because it was right there. I knew as governor that half of my state saw the Confederate flag as heritage and service. The other half of my state saw it as slavery and hate. It took 2/3 vote of the House and 2/3 vote of the Senate to get anything done. And after the manifesto came out, I called for the Confederate flag to come down. And I brought people into my office. I told my staff, I said, I want to have 4 meetings. I want to meet with the Republicans. I want to meet with the Democrats. I want to meet with the federal delegation. And I want to meet with community leaders. And don't tell them why I'm calling them in, because I knew they wouldn't show up. It was that tough of an issue. And when they came in, I said, at 3 o'clock today, I'm going to ask for the Confederate flag to come down. And if you will stand with me, I will forever be grateful. And if you won't, I won't tell anyone you were ever in this room. And I've kept my word to that. And at 3 o'clock, I had my husband with me because I thought he was going to be the only one standing with me at 3 o'clock. But we had multiple Republicans, Democrats, whites, blacks. We had multiple people call for it to come down. But then the hard work happened with the 2/3 House and the 2/3 Senate. In the Senate, the pastor of Mother Emanuel was a senator, and it was a legislative day. And when I heard of the shooting, I called him and said, Senator, I just heard what happened in the church. I'm headed there tomorrow morning. Whatever your congregation needs, I will be there. I'm so very sorry. And it haunts me to this day that that phone was in his pocket because he was in that room and was killed. The Senate passed very quickly because that was their brother. And they quickly passed for it to happen. And then it came to the House. And in the House, they just didn't want to move it. And so I told the Speaker, I said, we've got to get that flag down. He said, all right, let me see what I can do. He came back and he said, okay, we have a solution. We'll take the Confederate flag down, but they want to put a different type of flag up based on the Confederacy. I said, no, we can't have that. The flag has to come down. He goes back, he comes back to me and he says, Governor, I've got it, I've done it, we've taken care of it, the flag is coming down. And I said, great. He said, there's just one issue. He said, they want to leave the flagpole up. Now, I served in the legislature, and I know how they are, and I knew exactly what they were going to do. Because once the national media left, another flag was going to go up there. And I said, no, I want the flag and the pole to come down. He said, but Governor, you could claim a win. You could claim a win, and then all of this would go away. And I said, I want the flag and the pole down. And he said, I can't do it. I said, then let me talk to them. So I went into the Republican caucus, and I said, I want to tell you a story. I said, when I was growing up, my dad would go to Columbia, and sometimes I'd get to ride with him. And he always loved to buy produce from farmers. And one day we stopped by a produce stand, and he started getting his produce. And the owners were standing by the register, and I saw them look at each other, and I saw them look alarmed. My father wears a turban. They picked up the phone, and the next thing I know, 2 police cars drove up. My dad continues to get his produce, puts it in the basket. He goes to the register. He pays them, and he thanks them. And we get in the car, and he doesn't speak to me the whole way home. He was hoping I didn't notice what just happened. I knew exactly what had happened. And I told that caucus that day, I said, every day when I drive to the airport to get on the governor's plane, I pass by that produce stand and I feel pain. I said, don't let a child drive past the State House and see that flag and pole and feel any pain. Get it down. They went into debate at 1 a.m. that night. They called for the flag and the flagpole to come down. We didn't have riots in South Carolina. We had vigils. We didn't have protests. We had hugs. It starts at the top. When you go and you govern or lead without judgment of your people, but with getting them to see the best of themselves to go to a better place, that's the key of a leader. That's what you have to do. I've done it in South Carolina, I've done it at the UN, and I'll do it as your president.
What also was remarkable about the murder at the Mother Emanuel Church was the family members forgave the murderer. It's just extraordinary faith those families have that they can turn around and say, I forgive the person that took my mother's life or my son. Extraordinary.
When he appeared in front of the judge wanted to give them, he made an exception and wanted to give them the opportunity to say whatever they needed to the murder. This was maybe 3 days after the murder. Unprompted, without talking to each other, one at a time, they went up to him and they forgave him. Think about the faith that they had to forgive someone that had done something so evil to the people that they loved. It was, I will say, South Carolina's finest moment, because South Carolinians at that moment showed the country and the world what true strength and grace look like.
Absolutely. One final question. I thought somebody over
Make
here.
it a good one.
Make it a good one. I have one, but I don't know if I want to give it yet. But go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Governor Lane Glenn. I'm not an accountant. I'm a college president.
Train them and keep them. We should look at any immigrants that are, in the tech field. We now need artificial intelligence. We need cyber. If we've got any, we should be bringing people into this country based on merit. And when you do that, that strengthens your economy. It makes your talent pool better, and it improves the situation. Dreamers, yes, they need to be dealt with, but not until immigration reform happens. They always want to throw dreamers first. You have to go tell Congress, you do immigration reform, then we'll talk about dreamers. Otherwise, we don't talk about it. You've got to do the carrot and the stick approach. So they have to deal with it. We're going to have to deal with that, especially for people who've been here forever. But they owe it to the American people to do immigration reform first.
It's a little late, a little after 10, so I think we're going to have to conclude.
I'd like to just leave with just one thing. And then, first of all, you've been very patient and kind to sit here and listen to me. I appreciate it very much, and love that I've been able to be a part of this process. When I told you that I had run against that longest-serving legislator in a primary, when I did that, people laughed at me. And I got to work, and I earned their support, and I won. When I ran for governor, I ran against a lieutenant governor, an attorney general, a very popular congressman, and a state senator. I was Nikki who. I had 3% in the polls. I had the least amount of money. And I worked South Carolina like no one else, and I won. When I went to the United Nations, they said I didn't have enough experience. And I got to work, and I took the kick me sign off of our backs. I have been underestimated in everything I have ever done. And it's a blessing because it makes me scrappy and it makes me work hard. I have been to New Hampshire multiple times. You will continue to see me here. No one will outwork me. No one will outsmart me when it comes to earning your support. We're not taking any shortcuts. You're not seeing us come in, do a rally, and leave. You're going to see me touch every hand answer every question, do whatever it takes to truly earn your support. And I promise you, the support doesn't end on Election Day. My goal is to prove to you that you deserve better and to deliver on that. So if you like what I've had to say today, go tell 10 people. Tell them to go to NikkiHaley.com. You know more than anybody. The polls today are not the same polls we're going to see in the primary. If you don't like what I've had to say today, shh. Just don't tell anybody you were here. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Okay, Claudia.